Hello and welcome to this episode of the Big Rican on Sports podcast. I am your host. I am the Big Rican. Today is Saturday, July 31st, and we have been through the ringer this week, baseball fans. We're supposed to have Tones on tonight. We had a little miscommunication about time. I said 8:30. He thought it meant 8:30 Central. I thought he understood 8:30 Eastern. We'll figure it out. We will get him on because I had a really neat idea. It was supposed to be a live show this week, tomorrow night, with both him and Alex so we could break down the trade deadline. I will come to you Monday night with this episode with Alex. It won't be live. We're just going to record it. And then we'll get it sent out Monday night. So here's where I'm going to go with this show. I'm going to give my opinion on yesterday. Just me, obviously, with just me being here. But I also want to talk a little history and a little bit of current events, what's going on tonight down in Queens. And I'm going to start there. And tonight, the 2020 class of the New York Mets Hall of Fame was inducted. A ceremony that for all three of these guys should have been done years ago. The three inductees this year, John Matlack, who, just a quick rundown of him, the 1972 National League Rookie of the Year, won 2 games in the postseason in 1973 on the Mets' way to a pennant. An unlikely pennant after the way that season started. And, of course, he was the co-MVP of the 1975 All-Star Game as a member of the New York Mets. So Matlack, who is actually my father's favorite pitcher that the Mets have ever had, and my dad was a left-handed pitcher, just like John Matlack, who apparently lives in the Adirondacks in upstate New York. This I did not know. Long and short of it is Matlack should have been in a long time ago. He should have joined with some of the other members of the 73 squad. I think the whole 73 squad should be inducted themselves. Induct certain teams. Induct the 62 team, the first ever team. Induct the 69 team as a whole. Induct the 73 team as a whole. The 86 team as a whole. I don't know if they should be in a Hall of Fame or a Hall of how much drugs can you do. In all seriousness, they belong in the real Hall of Fame, that team. Just for the amount of cocaine and alcohol and everything else that was imbibed in that team and to win a World Series. The 88 team, another 100-win team. Yeah, sure, why not? There's one of the division champions in Mets history. Then you have the 99 and 2000 wild card winners with the black jerseys that the Mets wore last night. You have the 2006 division winners. And then, of course, you have the 2015 National League champions. Sorry, the cat's biting at my hand. The 2015 National League champions, which is where I want to go next after I finish this. The second inductee is the longest tenured member of the Mets organization of the trio, and that is Ron Darling. Of course, Darling was the guy who started games 1, 4, and 7 in the 1986 World Series for the Mets against his hometown Boston Red Sox. What many people don't know is that Ron Darling was acquired from the Texas Rangers along with Walt Terrell for Lee Mazzilli back in 1980 or 81. Just before that, Darling had pitched in maybe the greatest college game ever as his Yale team played St. John's and future Met Frank Viola. I think it was like 15 or 16, maybe even 19 innings, and he went the distance. He just kept going and going. So Darling goes in, 99 career wins for the Mets. Of course, that 86 World Championship, and he pitched the clincher in 88 to win the National League's Eastern Division against Philadelphia at Shea Stadium. Sorry, I'm drinking Starbucks dark roast. Because I thought Tones and I were going to go all night. So I am going to get Tones on to get his reaction because this is going to be huge. But the third and final member of the Hall of Fame induction of this year was Edgardo Alfonzo. Until the guy who just struck out on TV, because I have the game on in the background, the best second baseman the New York Mets have ever had. All due respect to Felix Millan and Wally Backman, but Edgardo Alfonzo was special. Maybe the greatest clutch hitter the Mets have ever had as well. Mike Piazza actually referenced him in his Hall of Fame speech because of how big Fonzie came up in front of him. Part of that vaunted greatest infield ever in 1999 with Ray Ordonez, Robin Ventura, and John Olerud. Fonzie was special, a 2001 All-Star and a 2000 National League champion. So hats off to the class of 2021. Actually, I think there's a class of 2020. I don't think they're doing a 2021. Later this year, though, they are going to retire Jerry Kuzman's number, which, again, is another thing that's been long overdue. So that brings me to the special Hall of Fame award given to Al Jackson, an original Met of 1962. 50 years in the Mets organization. As a player, first from 62 to 65 or 66, and then came back and pitched very rarely, but was on that 1969 championship team. Was a minor league pitching coordinator for years, was the Mets major league pitching coach for a few years in the late 90s. This is a man who bled orange and blue from the beginning. I mean, when you have a guy who can say he was managed by Casey Stengel and then coached guys like Al Leiter and Mike Hampton and those boys, that's saying something. It's nice to see his family as Al passed away a couple years ago. So that was a Hall of Fame induction. I actually have it on the DVR. I'm going to watch it after I finish tonight's episode. But let's get to 6 years ago today, July 31st, 2015. At 5 minutes to 4 p.m., it was completed when the New York Mets sent Luis Cessa and Michael Fulmer to the Detroit Tigers for Yoenis Cespedes, igniting a run to a pennant that no one saw coming before Cespedes became a Met. More importantly, let's talk about that few days, because it was just a couple days earlier that Wilmer Flores had thought he'd been traded to the Milwaukee Brewers, along with Zach Wheeler, for Carlos Gomez. Now, Gomez came up with the Mets originally in 2007, was the centerpiece of the big Johan Santana blockbuster in 2008 that brought him to Queens. And he ended up coming back in 2019 to, I believe it was his final year. In the big leagues, he played part-time for the Mets that year, had a big hit against the Nationals in 2019, big 3-run homer to win a game. But they thought Gomez was coming back in 2015, and fans, because of Twitter and whatnot, told Flores, hey, you've been traded. Good luck in Milwaukee. We'll miss you. And very famously, Wilmer Flores cried on the field because he had been with the New York Mets since he was 16 years old. He was in his early to mid-20s at that point in time. He loved New York. He had already had the flair for the dramatic, couple walk-off hits already in his career at that point in time. But the Mets didn't like the medicals on Gomez's hip. And the trade didn't happen. So now everybody in New York thought, oh, the Mets aren't going to do anything. They're going to fall by the wayside. The Nationals are going to run away with it again. It's going to be a lost season. Turned out they made the better move as Cespedes came in and was just absolutely otherworldly. 17 home runs from the day he became a Met until the end of that season to carry that team to a National League's Eastern Division title. Couple of big hits and a big throw in the playoffs against the Dodgers and the Cubs. And, you know, the World Series was the World Series. But it was 6 years ago tonight that race to a pennant really kicked off. And that is when Wilmer Flores hit a home run in the 12th inning of a 1-1 game against the Washington Nationals to beat them and bring the Mets within 2 games of the Nationals in the standings. It was a 3-game series from July 31st, August 1st, and August 2nd. The Mets were 3 games out, and by the end of that weekend had tied the Nationals. Later that week, took the lead in the division and never looked back, which led to, of course, the clinching on September the 26th in Cincinnati, who they're playing tonight, and they're losing 3-1 to. Then it brought on beating the Dodgers in the LDS, beating the Cubs, sweeping them in the LCS, and, of course, then getting to the World Series against the Kansas City Royals. I still say to this day that if the Mets didn't have the long layoff, they would have won that World Series. They had better pitching, and I think they had better they were more of a powerful team. The Royals were an opportunistic team, capitalizing on subpar defense. And really the layoff. So that brings me to this week. And what was a crazy week for Major League Baseball in general. And it all started a couple of days after the All-Star game, and live on my show here on the Big Rican Baseball Show, it will be called when Tone, Alex, and I sit to talk baseball, when Jock Peterson was the first chip to fall in his trade from the Cubs to the Atlanta Braves. The Mets chimed in after that, getting Rich Hill from Tampa Bay for 2 minor leaguers. So let's go through all the deals. Let's go through the teams who went where, and let's start with the biggest trade of all of them, and that is the move of the Dodgers to bring in Max Scherzer and Trey Turner. I mean, this is massive. You now have Kershaw, Buehler, Price, Scherzer in that rotation. That is insanity. That is a great rotation, but it should be tempered. Why should it be tempered? Because the Dodgers have more problems than that. Even though they're in second place in the National League West, they've gotten a lot of contribution from guys they didn't expect to be contributing, but Max Muncy has been there. Bellinger has struggled. Seager has been injured and now will come back and play shortstop and move Trey Turner to second. He's a free agent into next year, so you wonder if they're just going to let him walk, which if that's what the Dodgers do, is what the Dodgers do. But the rich get richer, and they also added Danny Duffy from Kansas City at the deadline. Another great deal for a team that needed pitching depth. Their buddies down the freeway in San Diego add Daniel Hudson and Jake Marisnick, a couple of depth pieces, and Hudson's a good bullpen piece for them, as that's been one of their Achilles heels this season. The Giants, who have been outstanding and have been a shock, add Chris Bryant. The guy who we thought was going to the Mets. They add Chris Bryant. Let me stop there and let's go into this. The Chicago Cubs and the Washington Nationals have started a full teardown rebuild. Really, the Nationals made everybody except for Steven Strasburg, who is a arm injury waiting to happen, and Juan Soto available. The Cubs made everyone but Wilson Contreras available. Because the biggest deal that surprised me was not Chris Bryant to the Giants. It was not the New York Mets getting Javier Baez and Trevor Williams for Pete Crow Armstrong. Not and, for Pete Crow Armstrong. It was the Anthony Rizzo trade to the New York Yankees. There are certain players that you identify with a franchise. You identify Derek Jeter as the New York Yankees. You identify David Wright as the New York Mets. I really think you identified Anthony Rizzo as the Chicago Cubs. He was that first piece that they got to start their rebuild that ended in the 108-year-in-the-making World's Championship in 2016. I was floored. I mean, I'm not a Cubs fan by any stretch of the imagination. It was a gut punch to me as a baseball fan that Anthony Rizzo is no longer a Chicago Cub. Yeah, he's a Yankee, and that annoys me too, but that's a different conversation altogether. So I am shocked that the Cubs tore it down. But they did. So let's get to some more of the moves. Let's get to a move involving the Cubs and the White Sox as Craig Kimbrell goes to the Chicago White Sox. And when I talked to Alex Monday night, he has got to be jumping for joy. They also added Cesar Hernandez from the Cleveland Indians, a powerful bat at second base. Ever since Nick Madrigal had season-ending hamstring surgery, they've needed a bat at second base. They get it in Cesar Hernandez, and Nick Madrigal actually goes to the Cubs, which Tone and our group chat between the three of us between Thursday and Friday was blowing up. I mean, every couple of minutes, my phone was buzzing. The Yankees not only brought in Anthony Rizzo, but also Joey Gallo from Texas, and Andrew Haney, the left-handed pitcher from the Angels. To give my quick opinion on this, the Yankees went the wrong way. The New York Yankees have nothing behind Garrett Cole. Let me say this. It's not that they have nothing behind Garrett Cole. They have no consistency behind Garrett Cole. They only bring in Haney, who is good, but he's not what they could have gotten. They could have gotten another arm, or they could have not added Rizzo and just gotten another arm. Speaking of the Nationals, Kyle Schwarber goes to Boston to add a left-handed power bat to go with JD Martinez. And listen, this is, they didn't have much left-handed besides Alex Verdugo and Devers. Now they add Schwarber, that third left-handed bat. For Willie, I got to say getting Starling Marte, getting Yan Gomes to catch, getting Josh Harrison to play the infield, those are big depth pieces for the Oakland Athletics. That was a huge couple of days for them. I am very impressed with what Billy Beane just did. He didn't give up a ton either. Let's see, what else we got? The Atlanta Braves went out and got everybody. Adam Duvall, Eddie Rosario, Soler, Jock Peterson, trying to replace Ronald Acuna. I don't know if it's going to work. They just took 3 out of 5 from the Mets, but they lost last night. And what are they doing tonight? I'll take a look for that as I keep going. The Cardinals made a couple of nice moves, adding John Lester and adding Jay Happ to their rotation, which was a little light on the left-handed pitching, so good for them. Let's see what else we got here. The Brewers add Daniel Norris, which is big because their bullpen needed some help. Another good left-handed arm in the bullpen. Let's see right now. Atlanta's 1-1 with Milwaukee. So I'm not going to do every deal. I am going to say this. The Cleveland Guardians. Let's stop this here. I like the name change. Having lived there, I know what the name means. I've gone over that bridge 1,000 times. I have actually thought the Guardians would be a really good name. Anything but the Spiders. Because my wife wouldn't let me go to another Cleveland game if they were called the Spiders. She doesn't like spiders. I'm surprised they started tearing it down too. Really not tearing it down, but not adding. They're still in the wild card hunt in the American League. It's a little hurtful to Cleveland fans for them to be doing this now. But I think people saw the handwriting on the wall when they traded Lindor to the Mets in the offseason, along with Cookie. So, yeah, again, the big shock to me was just the absolute teardown that the Nationals and the Cubs went through. The Cubs, I'm not surprised so much, but the Nationals, this is very Florida Marlins-esque what they're doing. They're 2 years removed from a championship, and they just shipped out as much as people love Soto, Trey Turner is their best player. You can argue with me all you want. Trey Turner is their best player. So that brings me to my New York Mets, and they kicked off the trading deadline season by acquiring Rich Hill from Tampa Bay. Well, Rich Hill's getting shelled tonight. Well, that's 4-1. But they need depth in pitching. Hill will give them that. Trevor Williams will give them that. The problem is Jacob deGrom has been shut down again. More inflammation in the elbow. A good thing, Cookie came back last night and pitched very well. He only went 4 innings, so they're kind of keeping him on a little bit of a pitch count. But he looked sharp, and he looked good. My favorite part was he actually accelerated off the mound to get a ground ball that was hit to make it out. They also wore the black jerseys last night. So as you see, as I move the thing down, and there's only one black shirt I own, and that's the captain. That's David Wright. They were selling a whole bunch of them at the team store. They were selling Piazza, of course, and all the players. Now, Mike Hampton made an appearance. The heck is that? So then we get to yesterday with the New York Mets, and all day Met fans on Twitter. And listen, Mets Twitter is a dark place. Mets Twitter is a dark and evil place. Criticizing the front office, hammering the front office. You had broadcasters going on there and saying, guys, they didn't trade for Cespedes till 5 minutes before the deadline. They didn't make the deal for Jay Bruce until 5 minutes before the deadline in 2016. Give Sandy and Zach some time and you'll find something. And we found it a little before 4 when the New York Mets acquired Javier Baez and Trevor Williams from the Chicago Cubs for Pete Crow Armstrong. And I'm pretty sure I saw cash considerations going back to New York. So why did the Mets go out and get a shortstop? That's the question I woke up to at 3 o'clock this morning when I fed my son from my sister. Well, I answered it this way, and I'll say this to her directly. Megan, here's why. Last week, Javier Baez went on, I think it was a radio show or an online show, and was asked about free agency. And he said, I want to play with Francisco Lindor. I would move to second base to play with Francisco Lindor. So you ask yourself, at that point in time, why? Well, first of all, they grew up together. They played against each other in Puerto Rico. They played against each other in Florida. They played travel ball together. They were drafted in the same draft together. They're roughly the same age. Baez will be 29 in December. Lindor, I think, just turned 28. There's video of them from the 2016 World Series. Lindor hit a double, and they start messing around at second base. And you say, well, you're moving a shortstop to second. How's that going to do? What's he going to be able to do? Guys, this was the middle infield for the Puerto Rican team that nearly won the World Baseball Classic a few years ago. They know how to do this. They know how to play together. As Howie Rose said on Twitter, Francisco Lindor just let out a primal scream. I believe Baez is coming. And he is. He's actually batting fourth tonight, playing shortstop with Lindor out with the oblique injury. He will shift to second base once Lindor is healthy. And he will be a fixture in the middle of that lineup. I got to tell you, I love this deal because I think it means they're going to re-sign him. So it begs the question, and this is where I'm going to go with this now. Let's jump ahead to the end of the season. Let's say they don't get it done. They don't win the World Series. What do the New York Mets do with Javier Baez and the issues that creates? Not issues, but the situations that creates. I'll tell you what they do. With all due respect to Jeff McNeil, he needs to move to third base or right field. Baez is a special talent. He's a Gold Glove caliber second baseman. I believe you can put together an infield that will be just as stout defensively as it will be offensively. Or you do what teams in the past did, and you platoon J.D. Davis and you put with Jeff McNeil at third base. If you move McNeil to the outfield, it means you're not going to re-sign Michael Conforto, which is sad. As a Mets purist, the fact that they drafted him and developed him and brought him up, and he was a big contributor to that 2016 World Series team, or 2015, excuse me, World Series team. He was a big contributor to the 2016 team that got to the playoffs. And he, 2 years ago, had his breakout season, which was overshadowed by the fact Pete Alonso hit 53 bombs and won the Rookie of the Year in a landslide. I think you move McNeil to right field and you tell him, Jeff, listen, we need you in the lineup. We need you to play every day. You're going to play out here because we got a guy who's going to win a Gold Glove at second. So that means going into next year, your infield could be Alonso, Baez, Lindor, and either J.D. Davis or Jeff McNeil. You can even move J.D. Davis to right. As he played left field in 2019, was pretty good. I mean, he's played a good third base this year. But the injury has kind of slowed his progression as a third baseman. He's got a great arm. And he played good left field. I mean, he really did. Or you move Dom Smith to right and you move JD to left. A lot of choices the Mets are going to have. But I think re-signing him is got to happen. Javier Baez needs to stay in New York Met. Some people were saying, oh, what if he gets a deal to play shortstop somewhere? What part of this dude's favorite person to play with is sitting at shortstop for the Mets right now? This isn't, you see it a lot in other sports. You see in the NBA, the Friends, the LeBrons and the D Wades and these guys, they want to play together and they do. Javier Baez made it very, very clear. He wants to play with Francisco Lindor. As far as what the Mets gave up, Pete Crow Armstrong, I think, will be a very good major league center fielder. He can go and get it in center. I think his bat will develop and his power will come, but his biggest weapon is his speed and his ability to play good defensive center field. The Mets had him up with the big club a lot in spring training, and he held his own. He was drafted, 2 years ago? So, I mean, it's rough to see Pete go. But to get Baez and to plug him in right away and an automatic offensive upgrade at shortstop from either Guillorme or VR, it's going to be pretty big, especially with the way Alonso's been hitting, with the way that Dom Smith has been coming around. This team needed that shot in the arm. Now they just need arms. So we'll see what this brings moving forward. The one deal that shocked me was Starling Marte goes from Miami to Oakland for Luzardo, the left-handed pitcher. Put this in your memory banks, everybody. Look out for Miami starting next year. Their rotation is going to be very, very good. Sixto Sanchez has been hurt all year, but you had Luzardo, you have Alcantara, you have Sixto Sanchez. This is a good rotation, and they will be a team that will compete with the upper echelon of the National League East of the Atlanta Braves and the New York Mets next year. So let's talk about deeper impact of the trade deadline. Let's talk about the winners and losers. And the winners, in my opinion, were the Los Angeles Dodgers, who got just better in spades. The Mets, because I think they set up for years to come by making that deal. The Atlanta Braves for just the amount of players they got for the limited amount they gave up. In the Jock Peterson deal, they gave up who they think the heir apparent to Freddie Freeman's going to be, and there was a reason for that because Rizzo was on the move. I really like what the Blue Jays did in getting Jose Barrios. My problem with the deal was Toronto gave up a lot less than it seemed that Minnesota was asking from the Mets. They wanted Dom Smith or somebody like that in order for Barrios to come to New York, and of course you say no. But Simeons, Wood, Richardson, and one other guy, really? Really? The Mets offered Ronnie Mauricio, who's going to be middle infielder / outfielder he's going to be a beast. Oh, well. I do like the Giants getting Chris Bryant. I think that's a bat they needed, especially with the injuries to Evan Longoria. Wilmer Flores can't walk off Kenley Jansen all the time. Under the radar, I like what St. Louis did, adding J-Hap and John Lester. They didn't go out and get a top-of-the-rotation starter. What they did is they went out and they got two guys who can fill in the middle and the back end and throw you innings. Also, what the White Sox did, getting Craig Kimbrell to pair with Liam Hendricks, scary stuff. Scary stuff for the back of that bullpen. Another one under the radar, the Phillies go out and get Gibson and Kennedy to work on their bullpen, which is where the Phillies needed the most help. I don't think it's going to be enough, but we'll see. All in all, yesterday's hilarity just blew my mind. And I got to say, I got to apologize. I said it was going to be the night after the trading deadline. I forgot it was on Friday this year on the 30th, not the 31st, which is today. Normally it's July 31st. So what's upcoming for the Big Rican? Well, we got Monday night with Alex. We're going to go over from a buyer's perspective of what they thought of the trade deadline. And sometime next week, I will get Tones on here and we will talk about a seller's perspective of the trade deadline. Very soon, we are going to start getting into the college football previews as we are now. August 1st is tomorrow. I got to start doing some homework because we have to get into this with Ohio State. They just had all the media days. We got Texas and Oklahoma wanting to move to the SEC in a couple of seasons. We have possible realignment in the Big Ten. I mean, a lot of stuff going on in college football. I'm going to get into that in the next few weeks. I'm going to start putting feelers out too. I want to do preview shows of each conference with different podcasters. I'm going to try and find people from each different conference so I can go over what's going to happen with them. I will get into what the Cleveland Cavaliers did in the draft, and I will have a Cleveland Browns preview upcoming. But there's a lot going on, guys. Bobby will be 4 months old on the 11th already, and I know I talk about him a lot, but that's my guy. Also, at the end of this month, as we get into the pennant race and beginning college football season, the final weekend of the month, I will not be around. I will not be recording. I will not be putting an episode out. So I'll do a few before then. It's my 10th wedding anniversary, so I'm off limits, guys. So look for an episode to be uploaded Monday night or early Tuesday morning with Alex from Row 7, as we will dive into what a buyer felt like at the trade deadline and where he sees that those purchases, as I use quotation fingers, where that will take the Chicago White Sox, who hold a commanding lead in the AL Central over the Cleveland Indians. Before I go away, I want to, not that I ever think you'll hear it, but I want to send thoughts and prayers and good wishes to Terry Francona, who has had to step away for the second time in 2 years to tend to health issues that he's got. If this is the end of the line for Tito, I think a plaque in Cooperstown should hang for him. You are talking about a guy who, in all these years in Cleveland, has never had a losing record, number one. Number two, you're talking about the guy at the helm of the greatest comeback in Major League Baseball history, and that is the Boston Red Sox being down 3-0 to the New York Yankees and Mariano Rivera on the hill, and all they did was win 8 in a row to win a World Series. So, Tito, best wishes. Hopefully you're there for opening day for the Guardians next year. It's tough when a guy you love to watch is out. I'm feeling it with DeGrom now, and with Tito, it's the same thing. He's been a fixture in my baseball life for most of it because he was with Philadelphia before that, then with the Red Sox for that time, winning those 2 World Series, and then, of course, his time now in Cleveland. As always, Big Rican can be found here on YouTube, on Twitter at Big Rican on Sports. Twitter, YouTube is Big Rican on Sports. Facebook, Big Rican on Sports. Anchor, Breaker, Google, Spotify, Radio Public, and of course, ask Alexa. Play Big Rican. Have a great rest of your weekend. I will come to you Monday night, and most importantly, let's go Mets.